Mr. President, and I want to thank the Senator from Rhode Island for his hard work with the Senator from Michigan in preparing this bill on defense authorization. With all due respect to the Republican minority leader, the statement that he made earlier on the floor is not accurate. The Republican minority leader said that on issues relating to Iraq, we have required 60 votes. I'd like to remind the Republican minority leader that the vote on the timetable on the supplemental appropriation bill was a simple majority vote. It was not a 60-vote threshold. The most important Iraq vote of the year did not require 60 votes on the floor of the Senate. It passed the Senate with a bipartisan roll call, 51 or 52 members supporting it, and was sent to President Bush for one of his only 3 vetoes elected president. I'm sure that the minority leader from Kentucky remembers it was not a 60-vote requirement. Now let's take a look at the defense authorization bill here. Let's take a look at the history of the defense authorization bill. Once again, I would ask the minority leader from Kentucky, please look at the record. What you said earlier on the floor is not accurate. In the last debate on the defense authorization bill, there were 2 Iraq amendments offered. One by Senators Levin and Reed, another by Senator Kerry, both related to the war in Iraq and both required only a majority vote. The senator from Kentucky has not accurately portrayed what occurred on the floor of the Senate, either with our supplemental appropriations bill or the previous defense authorization bill. Now, for those who are following this debate wondering why are you worried about how many votes are required, this is what the Senate is all about. The question is, will this Senate speak on the issue of the policy in the war in Iraq? The senator from Kentucky understands, because he's been a veteran of this body, that he does not have a majority of the senators supporting his position or the position of President Bush. And so he started this debate by saying, we won't allow a majority vote. It'll take 60 votes, 60% of the Senate, to change the policy on the war in Iraq. The senator from Kentucky is betting that he can hold enough Republican senators back from voting for a change in policy on the war in Iraq to defeat our efforts to start bringing our soldiers home. That is his procedural approach to this. He has stood by it, but he should confess it for what it is. It is a departure from where we have been on the debate on Iraq, both on the supplemental appropriations bill and on the defense authorization bill. And Mr. President, it's unfortunate and it's wrong. It is wrong to require 60% of this body to vote this way if traditionally on this war in Iraq we've required only a simple majority. I suppose it's encouraging to us that more than 60% of the American people get it. They understand how failed this policy has been of the Bush administration, the policy that's being supported by the minority leader of the United States Senate. They understand it. They want us to do something about it. But the senator from Kentucky has thrown this obstacle in our path. He has created this procedural roadblock. He has filibustered, starting a filibuster, to stop the debate on the war in Iraq. Now, I've been here for a few years, and I haven't seen a full-throated, fully implemented filibuster that you might have recalled from Mr. Smith's Goes to Washington, when Jimmy Stewart stood at his desk until he crumpled in exhaustion, filibustering a bill to stop it. Over the years, our gentility has led us to a different kind of filibuster. It's a filibuster in name only, where one side says, well, we're just going to keep this debate going on indefinitely, and the other side says, we'll bring the debate to a close, motion for cloture, bringing it to a close, and we'll see you in 30 hours. Have a good time. Maybe you want to go back and have a nice dinner with your friends. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Well, we're going to change that procedure this week. Since the Republican side has decided that they want to filibuster our effort to debate the war policy on Iraq, we have decided on the Democratic side we're going to have a real filibuster. One of the critics of this recently called it a stunt that we would stay in session, a stunt that we would have a sleepless night for senators, a stunt that we would inconvenience senators and staff and press and those who follow the proceedings. I don't think it's a stunt. I think it reflects the reality of this war. How many sleepless nights have our soldiers and their families spent waiting to find out whether they'll come home alive? How many sleepless nights have they spent praying that after the second and third redeployment, that their soldier will still have the courage and strength to beat back the enemy and come home to his family? It's about time for the Senate to spend at least one sleepless night. Maybe it's only a symbol, but it's an important symbol for the soldiers and families. It really goes to the nature of sacrifice. I guess I was raised as a little boy reading about World War II and remembering the Korean War when my two brothers served. There was a sense of national commitment in those wars. People back home, as well as those on the front, felt they were in it together. Sacrifices had to be made in your daily living habits and the kinds of things you could buy, and ration cards, and buying U.S. savings bonds. America was really one united nation in those wars. We accepted that shared sacrifice. We were better for that shared sacrifice. But this war, sad to say, this president has not summoned that same spirit of sacrifice. He's basically told us that this war can be waged without inconveniencing the lives of most Americans. Our soldiers go through more than inconvenience. They go through hardship and deprivation. Many of them face injury and death in serving our country. But for most of us, life goes on as normal. This president has not asked great sacrifice from the American people to even support these troops. When I visited Iraq, it's not uncommon to have a Marine or soldier over lunch say to me, "Senator, does anybody know what's going on over here? Does anybody know what we're up against?" It's a legitimate question. We focus on these